Does anyone know how I became a management guru in the Financial Times? I actually, on my website, which I've been working on for some years now, I started to call myself a management guru. And then I published a book earlier this year in which, in the biography in the back of the book, I called myself a management guru. And then I got all my friends at the business school in the marketing world to start referring to me as a management guru. And then somehow this journalist at the Financial Times was doing a little homework on the book that I'd written and some of the research I was doing on social media, and he must have stumbled across this term, management guru. And then he published an article in the Financial Times in June which said, Jamie Anderson is the management guru. I think this says something about marketing and communication in terms of putting your brand out there. So it worked, but I think one of the stories I want to be talking about tonight is about what you want to create in the world. Yeah? And in this new world we're going to be talking about, this new world of marketing communications, one of the most important stories is going to be where you want to go in the world, knowing where it is you want to be. It was interesting. We use this. We referred to this great brand in the world today. I'm sure all of you knew what that brand was, right? When we said this brand that's evolved over the last 3 years to really be one of the top brands in the world today, you all knew that brand, right? What is the brand? What is the brand? You don't know? Come on, what is the most successful brand in the world over the last 3 years? And this brand actually understands it. This brand understands the new world of marketing. Because in the old world of marketing communications, I think marketing communications was perceived as something that we did to people, not something that we did with people. And this new brand actually really understands that marketing and communication is not, we can't do it to people anymore. Because people are not naive anymore. And they want to trust, they want authenticity, and this new brand understands that. And what I'm going to talk about tonight, actually, I'm going to talk about a new concept, which is not about doing marketing and communications to people, but actually marketing and communication as a relationship and something that we do with people. Okay, so that's going to be very, very important. It's something we do with people. So if you do it with people, what we're also going to start talking about is having relationships with people. What's difficult about that? Can I ask you just to turn to the person next to you? And when I tell you that as a brand, you have to have relationships with people, one-on-one relationships with people, why is that so difficult? Can you talk to each other? Just for a couple of minutes. What's so difficult about not doing marketing communications to people, but doing it with them in a relationship? I'll give you a couple of minutes. Talk together. Okay, let's. I wandered around and had a few conversations with people, but one of the things I heard being talked about was one of the problems before is how do you, if you're a company which is engaging not, I've worked in the private banking sector. Now, the private banking sector have a particular model, and that's called really relationship-based marketing. You have a one-on-one relationship with a client. And because of that one-on-one relationship, you can get really, really deep in terms of a connection, where you feel that there's a trusted relationship. Now, what's the problem with that? The problem with that is in the old world, when you wanted to have that rich relationship, it was very difficult to have it with more and more people, right? Because it was one-on-one conversation. Now, the other dilemma was that, of course, so if you wanted to have these close relationships with people, you couldn't have it with a lot of people. That was the reality. That was the private banking world model, right? If, on the other hand, you wanted to reach a lot of people, what was the dilemma? If you wanted to reach a lot of people, you couldn't have the rich experience with people. Now, what I'm going to suggest is one of the most important things that has changed in the world is that trade-off that we had literally for centuries. The trade-off we had between having rich relationships with people and having mass relationships with people, one or the other, that doesn't exist anymore. That's been blown apart. And that in fact, is the biggest transformation that's happening. So we've got that change in the world, but the most important thing then is to say, okay, we have the potential now to have rich relationships with a lot of people, correct? Because I heard people talking about social media. What's the problem with that? They don't necessarily want to have a relationship with us. Do you understand? Yeah? Because, by the way, many of us want to have close relationships with them now because we want them to be following us on Twitter, we want them to be on our Facebook page, but why should they come to you? And in fact, what I talked about, you saw the little title on this first slide, was mass intimacy, because that's what we can have today. We can now have mass intimacy with people. The problem is, people may not want to have that intimacy with us. So the real dilemma in the world is, how do you, in this world where we can have mass intimacy, generate what I call followership, which is the desire of a customer. Now, by the way, when we're talking marketing, I'm not just talking business to consumer. This is also in the business to business world. By the way, it's also in the political world. If you're a politician, you are not, you have customers and they're called followers. They're called voters. And what I'm going to suggest is this principle. Mass intimacy has to meet something called followership. And followership is going to be all about experience. Giving people an experience where you don't push to them, but actually they are pulled to you. Now, who was the brand I was talking about? Because actually this brand, this lady, understands this concept more than just about anybody else. Who's the lady? Lady Gaga. She's the brand we're talking about. Okay, so I don't know how many of you have been watching the Twitter feeds this week or YouTube this week, but on Monday, Lady Gaga released a new single, which was called Marry the Night. How many downloads of that single has she had in the past 4 days? Any ideas? 11 million. As of last night when I checked, I was online last night, Lady Gaga now has 26 million Facebook friends and about 15.5 million Twitter followers. Last year, she was named by Time magazine as one of the most influential female entertainers on the planet, second only to Oprah Winfrey. How many of you knew her 3 years ago? Did you know her 3 years ago? Nobody knew her 3 years ago. Huh? But she has attracted a phenomenon of followership. And in fact, she's attracted people who feel that they have a relationship with her. Now, what else is very, very important is that not only has she attracted followers, she's commercialized this brand. What's the problem in the music world, folks? Anyone who's working in the music industry knows there's a big problem. The problem is that young people steal music. Yeah? They steal tracks from everybody else. It's called digital piracy. But in this world, they buy her music. She has sold 57 million singles and about 18 million albums in the last 3 years at a time of global piracy. And she's done that as more or less as a debut artist. Now, if you look around the rest of the world, there have been no debut artists in the top 10, for example, in Italy and Spain in the past 3 years. She's done that. Now, how has she done it? And I think the way she's done it offers us some lessons about how we live this new mass intimacy. Now, who is Lady Gaga? Let's go have a look at some of these slides, because here she is at the age of 4, born on the Upper West Side of New York to a wealthy entrepreneurial family, Italian-American, just like Madonna. But you know what? She's always had a dream, and her dream from the age of 4 was to become a superstar. She started, as I said, playing piano at the age of 4. She wrote her first piano ballad at the age of 13. But you know what? When she was a teenager, she didn't fit in. She was bullied at school. She was different. She dressed differently. She loved music when everyone else in the school that she went to in New York, a wealthy private school, were talking about business careers. She was an artist. Now, in fact, what she did when she finished high school, she went off and studied at university. She didn't go and study business or commerce. She went to music school. But in music school, she studied art. And in fact, the people she got inspired by were people like Andy Warhol and Damien